Hi YouTubers, Love at Scout 1. I had quite a well, I had three messages over the little sabbatical that I've had regarding side-by-side shotguns, and do I like them, and do I think they're worth buying and worth having, etc, etc. And yeah, they are. I started my shooting career with a single-barreled Webley and Scott shotgun, and then I bought a Sarasqueta double-barreled over and under, and I couldn't get on with it. And the next one I bought was an AYA Yeoman, a Spanish gun which I had a long time. And if any of you have been around your guns, then you'll know what I'm talking about. I like to shoot side by side. I like to shoot partridge on side by side, and I go a couple of times a year shooting partridge with some friends, just a couple of walked up days. And I've chopped and changed over years, but a few years ago I bought this side by side, which is the one that I shoot quite a lot. And this is a Boswell, Charles Boswell, made in London on the Strand about 1912. This left the factory actually in 1912. It went out to it spent some time in Australia, that I do know, and then it came back into the UK. It's got the proof marks saying it came back into the country. I paid 400 quid for this gun about 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago perhaps, and it was in a bit of a sorry state. I wanted to get a nice English gun, basically for Little Scout, really, as a bit of sort of something that I could, pass on to him when he starts his shooting career. It's not really fancily engraved. There's not loads of inlay. This is this is what's called a box lock. Now the box lock differs from the side lock. If this was a side lock gun, then these parts of the timber here would be a full lock, and the lock you can actually detach. The lock, basically the lockup is the inner workings of the barrel. A box lock's lighter, it's cheaper to produce, there's not as many moving parts, and they don't need to be serviced as regularly. Ask anybody that shoots, box locks or side locks, predominantly, they would say that a side lock's a lot easier to look after. Box locks are just as hardware and just as heavy duty, but take a bit of extra care to look after you. So on some guns you can detach the whole lock. This gun, like I say, is an old gun. It's over 100 years old. It's still tight. It's still tight in the faces, still tight in the breech. It will down birds just as well as a brand new gun, as well as a Purdy, a Holland and Holland. And at one time Charles Boswell was thought of in the same was talked about in the same hushed tones as Boss, as Holland and Holland and Purdy, etc. Boswell was the son of a butcher who moved into gun making as an apprentice, and opened his own business. Then he moved from one part of London onto the Strand into big offices, and he was there right up until after the Second World War, when unfortunately a lot of the records for Boswell were lost in the Blitz. But a guy in Florida now owns all the information about them, and I had this gun valued recently and was very pleasantly surprised. And the auctioneer guy got in touch with the guy who owns all the books about the guns, and confirmed that this gun did leave the factory in 1912 by its serial number and one thing or another. It's got what they call standard scroll engraving. Oops, catching it. The bluing, unfortunately, you might have seen pictures of shotguns that have got very nice case hardening. Well, unfortunately, a lot of that's worn off with use. I do have a barrel shroud on it. I don't know if you can see that leather shroud there. That's just when shooting does get a bit fast and furious, then it can, the barrels can warm up, and if you're not wearing gloves, especially on a partridge day or a grouse day, if you're out shooting in the sunshine, then you don't want to be burning your hands, because the barrels do get hot. It's a double trigger. This is quite a rare gun, so I found out, because it has 30-inch barrels, and what it was built for, and what Charles Boswell was known for, was building guns for what's called live pigeon shooting. Well, before clay pigeon shooting, or clay target shooting as it's called now, the sport was shooting live pigeon. What they would do is they would have so many pigeons in a wicker basket or a wicker case, and of course they would utter the word pull, and the box would open, and it was the person who could shoot as many live or feral pigeons in that time was the winner. Charles Boswell, if you read up on him, was a very, very good shot. It was as good a shot as some of our shooters now, and the live pigeon gun, basically that's where it gets its name from. Purdy make a live pigeon gun. They still make a live pigeon gun. Holland make one on a pattern. They don't call it a live pigeon gun anymore, but that's what it's for. Unfortunately, it's not an ejector. Ejector means when you've fired both triggers and you open the breech, there are springs on the extractors there which would fire the cartridges out. Unfortunately, this is old school. This is old school engineering. That's why I kind of like it. There is no ejectors on this gun. It's in very good order. Like I say, the breech, when you if you're ever going to go and buy a shotgun and pick one up, the first thing you do is test the barrel to gun fit. If there's no movement there, if a gun's been used and used and used, especially with box locks, as we discussed before, these two pieces of steel actually stabilise the stock. Well, if this, if it's had thousands and thousands of rounds put through it, then they work loose. Also, the ribs will work loose if you hold the barrels and just ting them as you would, to ring a plate or a cup to make sure it's not cracked. Then that's the way to check. You can also check. I mean, if you're looking at guns, you can check if the checkering is crisp and sharp. Then it's not had a right lot of use. The checkering on this gun is quite crisp. It's been used. It's not been overused, and it's not been abused, because everything's still quite tight, and the engraving and mated faces are still quite tight. But it isn't as sharp as it would have been. On a brand new gun, it's the edges are quite rounded over, but still, a nice thing. Let me just try and zoom that camera out a little bit. Yep, that's better. And it's a gun that I like. The only thing with it, the only downside to the gun is it's got a little escutcheon there where I could have my initials put on. I'm not a big fan of that, but when it came to me, it had a ding taken out of it. Now, I've spoke to my local gunsmith, and he said, yeah, no problem, Scout, fetch it, and we'll rag that escutcheon off and put you another one on. It's going to be sort of 20 or 30 quid to fix, which would just put the gun straight. But I do like it. It's a good gun. It's good for shooting game. It's a great pigeon shooting gun if you're shooting out of a hide. It is a bit long in the barrel, but all right for a high pheasant. At one time, old guns like this weren't worth anything, but people now are buying old English shotguns, especially provincial makers. Boswell from London, from where I'm from, Huddersfield. There was a company called Golden's. They made excellent hammer guns, especially 16-bore hammer guns, and they're getting quite rare and quite sought after now. Tom Horsley from York, he made good guns, and especially Webley and Scott shotguns from Birmingham. Really good guns, really good quality. And there are some unused examples out there, one of which I'll show you in another video, and people are going nuts for them. I know a couple of guys who have sacked in chunks of the pensions to buy shotguns, and have sold them at auction and had a killing and made a chunk of money. And well, it's just one of them things. If you've got the money to be able to do it, then it's great. But if you can't afford to do it, of course you can't do it. But one of those things, if you've got some money, and it's not doing out in bank, let's face it, and if you could have, you know, buy a nice pair, or Scottish guns as well are really doing well. A guy called Daniel Fraser, who made some really good guns about turn at century anyway, turn at last century. Fantastic guns. He's a provincial maker from Scotland, and Pape, which is another one. W Pape from they do very well in the northeast. That's where he's from Northumberland. Excellent guns. And I mean, Greeners, it might be a name that you know. They always sell really very well. Anyway, got off topic a bit there, but yeah, English shotguns, really good. I can't see a problem with them. There are some very good Spanish ones out there. It just depends what you're after, really, and what you want. Depends what kind of shooting you're going to do. But I don't think there's anything better than an English shotgun, really. Especially for, you know, if you're having a walk out, or you're going to a driven day, you know, where you're expected to come suited and booted in your tweeds, and you know, at least put a bit of cobber on your boots, and have made a bit of an effort, rather than just turning up in you know, a ripped up pair of combats and an old coat, which is the general uniform. But yeah, I hope that's been some interest to you. I'm going to dig this Webley & Scott out and show you that, and see what you make to that. All right, cheers guys, thanks.